You're listening to the Broken Havoc podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. What's up, everybody? It is Broken Havoc here, right here on the Broken Havoc podcast with episode 3 of News Shock, where I discuss the latest news and rumors of professional wrestling with WWE and AEW. Of course, we are coming off the heels of Saturday's Royal Rumble pay-per-view. I'm actually recording this on a Sunday. This will be uploaded on a Monday, so I'm going to be talking about basically what happened at the Royal Rumble, the latest news coming off the Royal Rumble. A lot of stuff, guys. Ronda Rousey, of course, made her return at the Royal Rumble and did win the Women's Royal Rumble match. So I'm going to be discussing the plans that they have for Ronda Rousey headed towards WrestleMania 38. Then, of course, we got major heat on Shane McMahon. Yes, Shane McMahon has major heat. And it's a big story, really big story. And, a lot of people are talking about it. Of course, WWE offered Jeff Hardy a Hall of Fame induction to get him back to the WWE because he did not want to go. They did not want him to go to AEW. So this is actually a really big story. This is something that I really want to talk about, and something that I really want get off my chest because WWE has really crazy tactics. But I'm going to be talking about that and other stuff. Of course, I'm going to be talking about ratings about this past week. Now, the SmackDown and Rampage ratings are not out, so I only will be giving you guys the Raw and Dynamite ratings this week on News Shock. That's because of the fact that I'm filming this on a Sunday, so that's why I'm only going to be giving you guys the Raw and Dynamite ratings. SmackDown and Rampage, the ratings are not out yet. Unless if the Fast Nationals came out because of WWE's tactics, then I would have reported it, but they're not out. But we're going to be talking about all this news right here on News Shock. But before I get on with the news, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below, and push the bell for notifications. And be on the lookout for more of my videos right here on the Broken Havoc podcast. I uploaded my Royal Rumble review yesterday on Sunday, so check that out. It's actually a one full hour review where I just go in depth on the show and then give you guys basically my thoughts on what happened at the Royal Rumble and my pure thoughts on the Rumble. Of course, I thought that it was just way too predictable. A lot of people say it was probably one of the worst Rumbles of all time, but I didn't think so. Was it good? Absolutely not, but I didn't think it was arguably the worst Rumble ever. I've seen way worse, in my opinion. But I will be talking about the Rumble, of course, with this first story. Ronda Rousey. Of course, Ronda Rousey made her return to the WWE. And there's a lot of news regarding Ronda Rousey. Of course, Ronda Rousey returned and actually won the Women's Royal Rumble. Ronda Rousey was actually in the rumor mill for a couple of days right before the Royal Rumble. Especially the day prior, everybody, and I mean everybody, was talking about Ronda Rousey. So there's a lot of things to discuss regarding Ronda Rousey and the plans that WWE will have for WrestleMania. Of course, if Ronda Rousey won the Royal Rumble, they're either going to put her in the match either with Charlotte or with Becky Lynch. I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts on that. So this actually report was from Dave Meltzer, according to Wrestling Observer Radio. Now, this was actually reported a day prior to the Royal Rumble. Dave Meltzer reported that Ronda Rousey will be returning as soon as Saturday's Royal Rumble, which did happen. And although it isn't known if she will be in the match or in an angle following the match, Meltzer also had details on what brand Rousey would be on and who she may face at WrestleMania. Meltzer said she's back. She's going to be back as a regular on SmackDown because of the whole Fox thing. But she will probably do some Raw shows as well. I think she will be on Raw on Monday. I think that's what has been hinted to at me. He was originally told Rousey versus Charlotte was not the direction, but he updated that story on Saturday, of course, that being the day of the Rumble. Meltzer also said that Rousey is expected to be with the company for at least 1 year. At least a year is the deal I heard, Meltzer said. I don't know if she will be there every week, but it's not just the Royal Rumble, a WrestleMania match, thank God. It's more than that. Rousey has not wrestled since WrestleMania 35, where she lost the Raw Women's title to Lynch in a three-way match that also involved Charlotte Flair. So, yeah, apparently now that we know that Ronda Rousey is she's already back and she did win the Women's Royal Rumble match, basically Meltzer stated that she is going to basically be in the WWE for at least one whole year. one whole year, and it's not going to be a one-off, kind of like with other part-timers with the WWE that they always do because of the fact that they cannot make new stars. But when it comes to Ronda Rousey's case, I'm actually happy that Ronda Rousey is back because, to be quite honest with you, the women's division in WWE has been quite lackluster, in my opinion. I haven't really been interested in the women's division. Honestly, when it comes to AEW's women's division, I have been more interested in that women's division than the WWE's, to be quite honest with you. But with Ronda Rousey being at WrestleMania, of course, she did win the Royal Rumble, so she's going to face either Charlotte or Becky Lynch. I think the best possible match for Ronda Rousey is 100% a one-on-one match with Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title. I think that's the best possible scenario that you can have for Ronda Rousey because of the fact that Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch was a match that we all wanted way back in 2019 when, number one, Becky Lynch was honestly, and, I'm not going to, quote anybody, but this is just what I personally feel. Becky Lynch in 2019, late 2018, early 2019 was arguably one of the best commodities and honestly the top star in the WWE. She was that over with the crowd. And, the fact that they didn't give us Becky versus Ronda, and instead they gave us Becky versus Ronda versus Charlotte in a triple threat by adding Charlotte last minute, like a couple weeks prior to WrestleMania, was absolutely ridiculous. I think it was actually really stupid on WWE's part. It would have been so much better story-wise if we had Ronda versus Becky. This whole thing is confusing me now. Ronda versus Becky at WrestleMania, and then, that would have been the main event because that was the story that everybody was interested in. But no, they had to add Charlotte in because of the fact that it was the very first women's main event at WrestleMania, and that, Charlotte has to be in every first ever, match because of her last name. And, I know that's a bold statement to make, but all of you fans can definitely agree with me with that because how many title reigns has Charlotte Flair had ever since she made her main roster debut? Over 10 title reigns. I can't even count how many title reigns she has. I believe she topped her father when it came to... No, I don't think she topped her father. Her father did 16. Of course, John Cena did 16 as well. But when it comes to Charlotte Flair's case, dude, Charlotte Flair has been arguably overexposed with the audience so many times that the audience is just sick and tired of Charlotte. That's just me. I'm just sick and tired of watching Charlotte on television. Hey, look, she's a good in-ring wrestler, but I'm just tired of seeing her on television because she's there all the freaking time. But Ronda Rousey's going to be in the WWE for 1 year, and the rumored plan is going to be Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte at WrestleMania in Dallas, which I think is a really stupid decision. I think it's really dumb, but hey, it is what it is. It's WWE we're talking about. They always love doing things backwards. There is major heat on Shane McMahon after producing the men's Royal Rumble match. So apparently Shane McMahon actually, produced. He was actually one of the main producers of the men's Royal Rumble match. So, the whole men's Royal Rumble match got a really huge negative reaction this past Saturday. And it was really negative, really negative. A lot of people called it the worst Royal Rumble match in the history of the Royal Rumble. I wouldn't say that. Was it amazing? Was it good? Absolutely not. It was nowhere near good in my opinion. But was it the worst? No, it wasn't the worst. I've seen way worse. Remember when Roman Reigns entered number 30? Yeah, I remember that too. But Shane McMahon apparently has huge heat after, of course, after attending the men's Royal Rumble match, of course, being one of the entrants. Ringside News has learned that there has been a substantial amount of heat on Shane McMahon after his role as lead writer and producer of the men's Royal Rumble match. We were told, and this is Ringside News, that this is the talk of WWE today. A tenured member of the creative team told us that Shane McMahon openly buried Jamie Noble, who was one of the producers, and he tried to book the Rumble around himself. Furthermore, McMahon was confrontational and he was gung-ho to put himself over, even fighting with people to do so. Shane fighting everyone, booking himself to be one of the last ones out, eliminating Kevin Owens. I think he did eliminate Kevin Owens. I think that was kind of stupid too. Just standing toe-to-toe with everyone has the entire locker room really angry. Another comment on the situation said that when Shane is more impactful in the Rumble than Biggie and Owens, even people who don't normally complain are complaining loudly today. When they are asked why Shane McMahon was made the lead writer and producer of the men's Royal Rumble match, we were told that his father obviously made a mistake, so Vince McMahon put him in that position. Steve Carrier of Ringside News tweeted that Shane McMahon was a producer and lead writer of the men's Royal Rumble, There's a ton of heat on him today, and we were told that Shane was fighting everyone, booking himself to be one of the last ones out, and he has an entire locker room really angry. So that was what Steve Carrier of Ringside News tweeted on Twitter about this whole story. So you guys know my thoughts on the Royal Rumble. Look, was it good? Absolutely not. There was really one of my biggest gripes of the Royal Rumble, especially this year, was, WWE made the right decision by having Brock Lesnar win. We can all agree that WWE made the right decision storyline wise. But when it comes to other aspects of the Royal Rumble, like surprises, look, the surprise entrance that we got, to me, weren't really surprise entrants because we knew that they were going to be entrants at the Royal Rumble anyway. So that was kind of a letdown in my view. Not only that, with WWE eventually, booking Brock Lesnar to win the Royal Rumble match, which was arguably the right decision to make, it made the absolute sense in my view. And almost everybody else in the fan base definitely agrees. The thing about it is that WWE really ran themselves into a corner in which, yes, they made the right decision, but at the same time, they made the right decision, but eventually ran the risk, not even running the risk. They just, had the consequence of, having the Rumble just being way too predictable. Everybody knew that Lesnar was going to at least enter near the end of the Rumble match. So it was pretty obvious that Lesnar won the match. And this was the right decision, but again, it was way too predictable. And that was the problem when it came to Brock Lesnar's case. But again, with Shane McMahon eventually being one of the main producers of the Men's Rumble and him getting a lot of heat for it, I mean, he did get a lot of offense in that match. And he did last, I believe he was one of the final four. I believe it stated in the report he was one of the final four. I completely forgot to mention that in my Royal Rumble review, but because of the fact that I went straight to the final two, of course, the final two being Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre, but having, Shane McMahon being one of the final four makes absolutely no sense because of the fact that, Shane McMahon hasn't been on television, I believe, since like WrestleMania last year. So why are they booking him to be in the final four? If anybody needed to be in the final four, it should have been AJ Styles, because AJ Styles entered at number 1, and they booked him to get eliminated by Madcap Moss, who was a jobber. I don't even want to say a jobber because he really isn't, but he basically got eliminated by somebody that nobody really gives a shit about. So it made absolutely no sense for them to really just eliminate AJ Styles in the stupidest way possible. The eliminations in the Royal Rumble were, especially this year's Rumble, were absolutely horrendous in my opinion. They were absolutely horrendous and they were absolutely stupid in my opinion. It was just really dumb. It was just really dumb on WWE's part. But, there's major heat on Shane McMahon. Hopefully there's more to this story. Let's see what happens because, this story, it ain't looking good for Shane McMahon. Look, Shane McMahon went from being the most liked McMahon of the entire McMahon family to one of the most hated members of the McMahon family. All right, in our next story, WWE tries to get Jeff Hardy to return by offering him a Hall of Fame induction. So yes, Jeff Hardy, as you guys know, was recently, I don't even want to say recently because this was like 1 or 2 months ago. They fired Jeff Hardy because of the incident that happened not only at the live event, but he refused to go to rehab. Of course, a lot of people were saying that Jeff Hardy relapsed. And Jeff Hardy is somebody that we all know, his demons are well documented. Jeff Hardy's demons are well documented. Of course, a lot of people recall the incident at Victory Road back in 2011 when he was wrestling Sting in the main event on that particular pay-per-view, and he came out all drugged up, all intoxicated, and it was really bad. And, you can blame that on Jeff Hardy, and I do blame that on Jeff Hardy, but at the same time, you got to put the blame on TNA because of the fact that TNA made the absolute most stupidest. And they were a company that made really stupid decisions. The management was actually arguably really stupid. I mean, they had Vince Russo there. Dixie Carter absolutely did not know how to run a wrestling company whatsoever. And these people actually let Jeff Hardy go out to the ring intoxicated, all drugged up, which was actually one of the dumbest things they could have done. Blame this on Jeff Hardy, absolutely. But blame this also on TNA's part for that. But that's just my little rant on that. But Jeff Hardy is known to get a lot, and I mean a lot of second chances. So, when it comes to this case with WWE offering, a Hall of Fame induction, it is really crazy that WWE, asked him to go to rehab, but Jeff Hardy refused, and then they fired him. But I think that's like really the whole gist of the story. But when it comes to Jeff Hardy, I mean, look, I'm going to be actually reading the story to you guys actually right here because of the fact that, this story is actually pretty huge. So in the latest edition, I wouldn't necessarily say the latest edition, but of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer revealed that WWE made an attempt to get Jeff Hardy to return to the company after releasing him. Meltzer reported that WWE's John Laurinaitis called Hardy a few weeks ago attempting to get him to return. The offer included him inducting Hardy into the WWE Hall of Fame as part of this year's class, but Hardy turned it down. So here's what Jeff Hardy stated. Here's an update on Jeff Hardy. John Laurinaitis called Jeff Hardy to get him back a few weeks ago, including an offer to put him in the 2022 Hall of Fame class. Hardy turned it down and asked for his drug test results because he knew he wasn't going to test positive for recreational drugs. It took Hardy and his ex-wife 6 weeks to get the results back. 6 weeks to get the results back. There was a feeling right now that this is the one guy that they don't want in AEW because of the realization that the Hardy Boys will be revitalized as an act, given the level of teams like Young Bucks, FTR, Santana and Ortiz, Penta and Phoenix, of course, the Lucha Bros, and so many others. Hardy is still under contract with WWE through March 9th, so AEW cannot make a legal offer to him, but the belief is that unless he goes back to WWE, which at this point it doesn't look like it will happen, he will be AEW bound, end quote. This is a quote by Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer. So this whole thing with Jeff Hardy, it's really, a lot of people state that, this situation with Jeff Hardy, Jeff Hardy, should, definitely, of course, spend time with his family, all that stuff, because a lot of people were really worried about Jeff Hardy, especially after the incident at the Live event, which there is a video on Twitter about it. It was all over Twitter when it first came out. But when it came to Jeff Hardy's case, I mean, the fact that WWE offered Jeff Hardy a Hall of Fame induction after firing him a couple months prior, for the main reason because of the fact that they do not want him to go to AEW, is absolutely hilarious to me, because it's not only hilarious, it's embarrassing. It is really embarrassing because of the fact that WWE always has stated that AEW is not competition, but their actions have showed, I mean, like, they are competition to them. I mean, for God's sakes, they put NXT head to head against them for the first 2 years of Dynamite. You know what I'm saying? Like, WWE's tactics show otherwise, and WWE really makes a lot of embarrassing choices. And the fact that they're trying to get Jeff Hardy because they know that he will be reuniting with his brother in AEW is insane. I mean, why is WWE really worried about where Jeff Hardy is going when it comes to another promotion if their own product, WWE's own product, is not good at all? Especially when it comes to the tag team scene, it is not good in the WWE. I mean, bro, none of the tag teams are just really memorable in the WWE, in my opinion. They do not have a strong or a real. They don't even have a strong or real tag team division in the WWE right now. So the fact that the WWE is basically not wanting Jeff Hardy to go to AEW and offering him a Hall of Fame induction is absolutely hilarious to me. That's just my view. Tony Khan originally planned Beach Break to be at an old WCW venue. So, of course, we all know this past Wednesday was Beach Break, which saw the awesome-ass ladder match between Cody Rhodes and Sammy Guevara. Arguably one of the best ladder matches in the modern era of professional wrestling. But Tony Khan originally planned to hold Beach Break at an old WCW venue, and I would assume this would be Club La Vela. So, AEW put out, this was a report from the Wrestling Observer. The original plan was for the special event to be more like the classic WCW spring breakout episodes of Nitro that aired annually from Club La Vela in Panama City Beach, Florida. Dave Meltzer outlined the idea in the Wrestling Observer radio. He basically stated, and I quote, "Don't you think that Beach Break should have been in Panama City? When Tony Khan started this promotion, one of the ideas was that, in fact, Beach Break would be at Club La Vela, which I think was in Panama City. I don't even think it exists anymore. But the idea of doing that's where the whole idea of Beach Break came from, was the spring breakout show that WCW Nitro used to do every year. And this was certainly not that by any means. Most fans simply laughed at and that's the ending quote from Dave Meltzer, but most fans simply laughed at the idea of Beach Break being in Cleveland, Ohio in the middle of winter. AEW still put quite on a show for the fans in Cleveland. Tony Khan might consider doing the event in a warmer location next year." So Yeah, I stated this in my Dynamite review. It's weird that you have a show called Beach Break and you're holding the show in Cleveland. That is just actually really funny to me. I did state earlier, I mean, like, they should have held this show, this special episode of Dynamite at Club La Vila in, Panama City Beach, Florida. Really grab that young adult demographic that WCW used to do back in the late 90s. They always used to do those big spring breakout shows, and those spring breakout shows were actually really successful, and it made them look cool. It made WCW really the cool brand to watch. And with Tony Khan, of course, they did do the Jericho cruise, and that was basically like their version of spring break. You guys remember when they trademarked Bash at the Beach? But then, of course, WWE got the trademark back. But, AEW got away with it for a short period of time. But, of course, they did do a whole Dynamite in Jericho's cruise. Do I think next year they will do a show in Panama City Beach? I hope so, because of the fact that, look, I actually looked up Club La Vila, if it still exists. It still does exist. It clearly states, if you look it up on Google, it states that it is still open. And, I would love, for me as a fan, I wasn't alive when WCW was around. Actually, I was born a year after WCW went out of business. But, of course, I would watch those old WCW shows, on the network and all that shit. I would love, and this is just me saying, I would love to attend an AEW Dynamite. I already attended 2 Dynamites at the Prudential Center. I would love to attend AEW Dynamite at, Club La Vila, in Panama City Beach, Florida. It'd be such an awesome-ass experience. And it'd be really fun and cool to do because, again, it makes AEW the cool brand. And, that is really something that WWE themselves need. I mean, AEW really does not need this because they're already the cool brand. But, again, it would have been much more smarter by Tony Khan to really have this show be at Club La Vila, but it didn't happen. But hopefully next year they will book a Dynamite for Club La Vila. I really hope that is the case because of the fact that, those spring breakout shows were really epic. Of course, you had scenarios where guys were being thrown in the pool. Like, the ring was literally constructed on top of the pool in Club La Vila. It looked so dope. But, yeah. Kenny Omega's AEW timeline is still up in the air. So, Kenny Omega, of course, is in the news. And, really, we do not know when he's going to be coming back. So, this story, on the recent Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer said that there was a plan for Kenny Omega's comeback. The former AEW World Champion was initially set for a March return, of course. The beginning of March, that's when we're going to be having the Revolution pay-per-view. That timeline is once again up in the air. A lot of changes in AEW since Kenny Omega has been around. The cleaner will have a bunch of new stars gunning for his spot, and if anyone can perform at the level, it is Kenny. It could be some time before Kenny Omega returns to a wrestling ring. Anyone who follows his career knows that he's giving his comeback 100% effort. Hopefully, Omega is able to continue working towards that moment. We do not know when Kenny Omega will return to AEW. The original plan was March, but things are constantly changing. Hopefully, Kenny has a full and speedy recovery. So, I was reading this from Ringside News, but this was a report from the Wrestling Observer, and I'm getting this from Ringside News. So I'm getting the article. I'm reading the article from Ringside News, but the original source was the Wrestling Observer. Kind of retract my words right there, but Kenny Omega's return is still up in the air. So of course, we all know that Kenny Omega dropped the AEW World Championship back in November at Full Gear to Hangman Adam Page. And Kenny Omega eventually took time off to basically heal his injuries because he had a bunch of injuries when he was the champion. He basically carried AEW on his back throughout the majority of 2021. And I thought it was a great title reign. And, I've stated in my Dynamite reviews, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting what we will see when it comes to Kenny Omega coming back because I see Adam Cole in a really, high top tier feud with Kenny Omega throughout the majority of 2022 this year. Once Omega comes back, shit's going to get real. We're going to get the Undisputed Era versus the Elite inside Blood and Guts. That is the most obvious match that could possibly happen. And not only that, we're going to be having a whole feud regarding Adam Cole and Kenny Omega before Adam Cole eventually goes to the world title scene. That's how I view it. There's many different scenarios in which AEW can utilize, the world title scene, and also they can utilize Adam Cole. But Kenny Omega, his return is up in the air. Hopefully he returns on time. Hopefully by at least around mid-March or early April, or at least April. Around that time, I see him returning. But who knows what is going to happen? Of course, Kenny Omega has been working really hard on his injuries, and hopefully he goes and has a speedy recovery, because I would love to see Kenny Omega back on AEW television. All right. On our next story, AEW could be in not AEW, NXT could be in another huge change soon. As you guys know, NXT went through a revamp this past September with NXT 2.0. Now, I do not watch a lot of NXT. I was never the biggest NXT watcher when they were really popular, of course, on the WWE Network when Triple H was running the whole brand, but I would stick around to watch a couple of the takeovers and see all the great matches that would happen in NXT, because, you know, the way NXT did wrestling, it was basically a super indie on a WWE budget, and it was arguably the WWE's best product. I didn't watch it a lot, but arguably, I mean, the matches that came out of the original NXT were insane. I mean, you know, we had Adam Cole versus Johnny Gargano in the 2 out of 3 Falls match at TakeOver New York. You had a lot of great fucking matches. Of course, the War Games matches, most of them involving the Undisputed Era. Ricochet versus Adam Cole at TakeOver was probably one of my favorite matches. I mean, we can all remember that freaking spot where Ricochet did try to do a springboard moonsault, but then landed into a super kick by Adam Cole. That was dead ass. A mark out moment right there. But, you know, NXT was really something special, and basically WWE killed it. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say I watched NXT all the time and I was the biggest NXT watcher, because quite frankly, I was never the biggest NXT watcher, but I knew how special NXT was for a lot of fans, and, you know, especially the WWE fan base. You know, NXT, you know, had its own fan base, and I could really make the argument that the true brand split within the WWE was not Raw and SmackDown. The true brand split within the WWE these past couple of years was WWE and NXT. That, in my opinion, was the true brand split. Not Raw and SmackDown. It was WWE and NXT. But NXT, after they went through that revamp, I remember when they first revealed the NXT 2.0 logo, I laughed my ass off, because I knew definitely this was definitely a Vince McMahon call. But I'm going to be talking about the story. I'm getting this article from Ringside News. So WWE revamped NXT in a huge way when they became NXT 2.0. The new vision of WWE's developmental brand has not hit with viewership, and that's impossible to ignore at this point. Now we can see another change for the brand. Triple H's hand-picked people were fired from NXT in one chunk of releases. This saved Shawn Michaels, who pretty much stands alone as the last remaining Triple H guy. WWE is also said to be happy with HBK's performance. Ringside News has asked around about the report that Shawn Michaels is spearheading NXT's broadcast under the direction of Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. We are told that the report is not entirely inaccurate, but it changes day to day with NXT. Furthermore, a tenured member of the creative team informed us that NXT might be in for another shift sooner than later. We were told that don't be surprised if the entire brand looks different by WrestleMania. The story is just really funny. NXT 2.0 was not a hit with fans, and that is obvious. WWE failed to attain the demographic that they're going after, and that might call for another change in direction. We're not entirely sure what else could change, but you never know what can happen in the WWE. So I got this report from Ringside News, and yeah, again, I'm not the biggest NXT watcher, but again, even if you didn't watch NXT, you knew how special NXT was, and everybody knows. Even to the people that didn't watch NXT when it was popular, me included, we all know that NXT was basically Triple H's baby. You know, Triple H really invested a lot in NXT and really, you know, spent a lot of time really developing the future of the company. And I've always stated the WWE had the future of the company right in their hands, and they completely rejected it. But this whole story of, you know, NXT, you know, possibly being revamped again a couple months later after WrestleMania, I mean, it's kind of a joke. You know, NXT went from being a cool show to basically, I don't really want to know how to call it, basically a garbage mainstream show. And honestly, you know, it gives me more of a reason not to watch NXT, because the main reason why I didn't watch NXT is because of the fact that, you know, if I was watching NXT weekly, right, and I saw a wrestler on NXT that I was really a big fan of, and then I saw them go up to the main roster, then they would just be buried instantly. What was the point of me watching NXT to begin with? Now, that does not fall entirely on the fault of Triple H's team. That absolutely falls in the hands of Vince McMahon. That is completely Vince McMahon's fault. Because of the fact that, you know, Vince McMahon, you know, really did not watch NXT and watch a lot of the talent that he was calling up. He just basically brought in a bunch of guys, and they just didn't care. They just buried them. I mean, look at Keith Lee. Keith Lee was set to be one of the biggest stars in the WWE after NXT. Of course, when he got called up, they stripped him down to everything. They stripped him down to his theme music. They changed everything about him. And, you know, they called him Bearcat Lee, clawing his way to Raw. Like, bruh, stop. You know what I'm saying? But, like, you know, NXT, you know, is not really, it's not what it used to be anymore. NXT is just dead. NXT is dead. And this is coming from someone that barely watched NXT when it was popular. I would only watch a couple of the takeovers. That's just me. I would only watch a couple of the takeovers. But, you know, a lot of good things happen with Triple H's NXT. And, you know, Triple H, I really feel bad for him. He's really getting shammed, man. He's really getting shammed right here. And it really sucks because of the fact that, you know, a lot of people were saying that Triple H was going to be the one to take over Vince McMahon, but we all know now that is not the case because there's a potential of a sale happening when it comes to the WWE, and you never know what can happen. So, yeah. Chris Jericho claims that AEW treats talent a million times better than the WWE. So, Chris Jericho on a podcast stated that that AEW treats their talent 1 million times better than the WWE. So recently, he was speaking on the Wrestling with Freddie podcast. Chris Jericho talked about the backstage environment in WWE and AEW. Jericho claimed that AEW treats their talents 1 million times better than the WWE. And this is a quote from Chris Jericho. AEW's treatment is 1 million times better than WWE's ever was because the Khan family are owners of a sports team. So they come at it from a sports standpoint. I never had hotels or cars provided ever. In the 30 years of working in the United States, if I did a one-off for something, but WWE really never took care of that. On the other hand, AEW does. Chris Jericho is certainly happy with his time working with AEW, and it's unlikely that he will ever go back to working for Vince McMahon again. So, yeah, basically, you know, what Jericho stated is absolutely true. I mean, you hear all these stories that AEW is a great environment to work in, and not only that, they do treat their talent 1 million times better than the WWE's, because of the fact that the WWE really do not care about their whole roster because they view every single member of the roster like literally every day. If you're a member of the WWE roster, you are literally just thinking about, are they going to release me today? Because you never know. WWE can go through a round of cuts any day of the week, and they have been doing that for the past couple of months. And you're possibly thinking, oh my God, they're going to fire me. They're going to fire me. And it's flat out corporate BS in the WWE, but it is what it is. Big E officially moved to the SmackDown roster. I was talking about this a little bit on my SmackDown review. Big E was officially moved to the SmackDown roster. Why? It's now made official. He's officially part of the SmackDown roster. I do not know why this is the case. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever for him to be a part of SmackDown if he was a part of Raw. Again, this is another example of WWE needing to end the brand split. WWE has to end this brand split between Raw and SmackDown because it absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. And not only that, it's a complete joke. And, you know, not only that, it causes distinction between the networks, Fox and USA. Like, they're literally fighting over which wrestler they want. Can't you y'all just share them? It's ridiculously petty, but WWE really needs to end the brand split because it's just a joke now. It really is a joke. LA Knight is up for a main roster call-up. Of course, LA Knight, a.k.a. Eli Drake. You know, I was introduced to Eli Drake when he was in Impact Wrestling a couple of years ago. I didn't watch a bunch of his matches, but I loved the promos that Eli Drake cut. Like, you could tell by the promos that Eli Drake cuts, or LA Knight, whatever you want to call him, you know, the guy is gold whenever, you know, he speaks on the microphone. But LA Knight is up for a main roster call-up. Now, according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer mentioned that LA Knight is being heavily considered for a call-up sometime in the spring. The 39-year-old is someone who WWE officials are very high on right now, and that is a good thing. This is a quote by Dave Meltzer. There is also talk of putting more Raw and SmackDown talent on NXT to build the ratings like they did when Styles was brought in. Even though he's 39, the company officials are very high right now on LA Knight, and as of a few weeks ago, he was slated for a main roster spot in the spring after WrestleMania. Now, that is a quote by Dave Meltzer. It's easy to come to the conclusion for Knight. He's ready for the main roster, and working to help younger talent in NXT 2.0 is not what he really signed up for. We'll have to see what happens next, but because a few things can happen once, Vince McMahon can get his eyes on someone during main event. Of course, I think he has been wrestling out on main event. Correct me if I'm wrong. I do not watch main event. Nobody watches main event, but there has been a couple of NXT wrestlers wrestling on main event. Of course, I believe Roderick Strong, Tommaso Ciampa. Roderick Strong is one of those guys that I definitely do see get released. I do not see WWE, especially with their corporate philosophy now. I don't think they'll look at a guy like Roderick Strong and want him to keep him there. I think they'll definitely release Roderick Strong, but they had guys like Roderick Strong, Tommaso Ciampa, LA Knight, I believe, was there too. But if LA Knight gets called up to the main roster, I mean, I do not mind LA Knight being called up because of the fact that when you look at a guy like LA Knight, you can definitely see that is definitely a guy that Vince McMahon will love. So for them to call up LA Knight would be definitely a good decision on WWE's part. Not only that, it would probably make for interesting television, in my opinion. All right, now I'm going to be discussing the ratings. I'm only going to be talking about the Raw and Dynamite ratings because of the fact that the SmackDown and Rampage ratings are not out yet. And not only that, I am filming this video on a Sunday, so bear with me here. But the Raw ratings this week, they draw their best audience for the Royal Rumble go-home show. Overall, I thought the show was really not that great for when it comes to a go-home show. The opening segment was, in my opinion, disappointing, of that being the weigh-in between Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley. And the last segment being the freaking birthday celebration was absolutely dumb. But Raw this week drew 1.766 million viewers on the USA Network, according to the Nielsen ratings on Showbuzz Daily. This is up 9.49% from last week's 1.613 million viewers. And after that, of course, Monday Night Raw drew a 0.46 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. This is up 6.97% from last week's 0.43 key demo rating. Of course, last week, Raw actually tied with Dynamite in the 18 to 49 demographic. And this week, they actually beat them in the 18 to 49 demographic. Now we're going to be talking about Dynamite. Dynamite actually went up. Yes, Dynamite went up. They actually reached 1.100 million viewers on TBS, according to Nielsen, via Showbuzz Daily. Of course, Nielsen is the Nielsen ratings. That's where the ratings come up from. This is up 6.59% from last week's episode, which drew 1.032 million viewers. This week's Dynamite drew a 0.41 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic this week. This is down 6.81% from last week's 0.44 rating. And again, last week, AEW actually did tie with Raw in the 18 to 49 demographic, which is actually really shocking. There were a couple of weeks where AEW actually beats Raw in the 18 to 49 demographic. So, I don't think they did not tie them. I believe they did beat them last week. Correct me if I'm wrong. I got to go back, but I think they did beat them last week. I got to go back, but if I'm wrong, I'll say that I'm wrong. Dynamite ranked number 2 on the cable top 150 this week with a 0.41 rating in the 18 to 49, and it ranked number 31 in viewership for the night on cable this week. So the SmackDown ratings and Rampage ratings are not reported yet. So yeah, but yeah, overall these ratings these are really good. Of course, the Raw ratings went up. Does that mean the show is still good? No. The Dynamite ratings definitely went up. I'm actually really surprised that Dynamite actually went from a 1.0 to a 1.1, and I'm actually happy to see that because of the fact that AEW really, ever since they moved to TBS, their ratings have really grown. I mean, I believe their second week they did 900 and something thousand, but it's great to see them back in the million mark. Of course, they did reach a million last week, but it's great to see their ratings go up because of the fact that the show is that damn good. Of course, we saw the ladder match between Cody Rhodes and Sammy Guevara for the undisputed TNT Championship. It was arguably one of the best ladder matches, in my opinion, in the modern era of pro wrestling. So that is great to see. Raw was not really that good of a go-home show for the Royal Rumble. I thought the segments and the matches were just way out of place, but that is just me. But I felt like the matches, were not bad. Some of the matches were not bad, but in my opinion, I just wasn't really as invested in Raw. There was a couple matches on the show that were really good. I couldn't recall if that was last week's show or if this was last week's show or 2 weeks ago, where WWE had a really good episode of Raw when it came to the in-ring matches. I think it was this week. Correct me if I'm wrong. Raw is such a bad show that I really just do not remember anything what happens on the show. But those were the ratings. Again, the SmackDown and Rampage ratings are not reported, but that was News Shock, episode 3 of News Shock right here on the Broken Havoc podcast. So yeah, there was a lot of stories that came out when it came to, of course, a lot of things, of course, Ronda Rousey, Shane McMahon, Jeff Hardy, a lot of news stories. But that was episode 3 of News Shock. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening and a lot of news that is going to be coming out in, the news for wrestling, especially since we're now on the road to WrestleMania in April, which I'm definitely excited for. But yeah, overall, I mean, these news stories, I mean, the funny story was Tony Khan really bringing back, the WCW venue. That was actually really funny. But, these news stories are actually really, huge, and, we'll see where they go. But that was News Shock I'm not going to say any date because there's no date, but I'm going to be uploading this video on Monday. So you guys I'm filming this on a Sunday, but you guys are going to be watching this on a Monday. So yeah, that was episode 3 of News Shock. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and be on the lookout for more videos. And this is Broken Havoc from the Broken Havoc podcast with News Shock, signing out.